Okay, well, good morning. We're now joined by Neil Ford of Aitchison. Neil, welcome.
Good morning.
And thank you for bringing the machine in. I'd like you really to give us a bit of background behind it, behind the principle and whatever, and then move on to talk me through the key features.
Okay, so to give you an overview, Jonathan, the drill's been manufactured for over 70 years. Okay, it's been in the UK for over 50 years. And we have been distributing the drill, which is manufactured in New Zealand, for the last 5 years. With the drill, we offer something from kind of 2.1 meters straight through till 6 meters. The current drill we've got drilled the paddock here. And literally, we could offer sort of 2.1, 3 meter. We can also offer as well seed or seed and fertilizer options, but also mounted and trail drills as well. But in the last 5 years, we've done so much with the drill, and we've drilled so many different crops, from anything from clovers straight through to cover crops, wheat, barley, peas, oats. So an extremely cost-effective way of sowing crops.
Okay, and with all of those options, and I guess it's quite a flexible drill then in that respect. You've been able to handle all of those seeds, various depths.
Yeah, so the way in which it delivers the seed, it uses a very, very gentle sponge roller. So basically, it's gravity fed, so it's not air fed. So when you have different densities of seed, it basically, whatever touches the sponge ends up dropping under gravity into the ground. But it does it in a different way than lots of other drills that are currently on the market. So this uses what we call a T-boot system. And the T-boot system creates a very narrow slot at 10 millimeters wide. But underneath, it creates a T system, which is about 35 millimeters wide. Now, the beauty of this drill also as well is on the back of the T-boot, it has a set of wings. The idea of those wings is that when it's actually in the ground and it's pulling through the ground, what it does then, it scrapes the underneath of the existing layer and creates a very nice till, so you get a good seed to soil contact. So what I generally do is when I'm drilling a field, I will generally sort of go in, drill the field, but a lot of people will generally go in and roll the field afterwards. We don't roll, but a lot of people will generally put something like a chain harrow or something behind the drill just to move the soil about.
Yeah. So in effect, because you've got this T-zone at the bottom, it's not like you're placing the seed directly in line with the slot that the tine's created.
Okay, so the idea is behind is when we create that T-boot, what we want to do is encourage growth within that slot. So what we do is by the T-boot creates a nice little hollow underneath the existing lay, but that then creates warmth, moisture, and then gives the seed a good environment to grow. So typically what we can find with this particular drill is once we've drilled a field, and it might be onto an existing layer which has been half round up, or direct drilled into a grass lay, what we actually find is generally within 3 to 4 days, we'll then start to see growth. And then within about a couple of weeks, we'll generally see it prolific and really growing really, really well.
So the benefit as well of a tine-based system here is that you're going to affect a little bit of soil movement for making crumb and making seed-to-soil contact.
Absolutely. You know, I mean, with any tine drill, it's unlike a disc drill. It does create a bit of disturbance on the ground, but not too much of a disturbance.
Enough to do the job, but from a grassweed point of view, then it's not like you're boiling up and bringing a lot of subsurface seed, buried weed seeds through to the surface.
Now, we're only interested, Jonathan, in the top 35 millimeters. That's the only part of the soil that we're actually interested in actually establishing that crop.
So talk me through then from the front. You've got discs to prepare and cut through the root ball.
Okay, so the discs are purely designed just to actually cut the existing lay. So then just to create a lead-in for the tine and behind. So what we've got at the moment is we've got a tine in line with a disc. So the disc is just merely for cutting the surface trash. Now the disc is adjustable, And what we find is generally on very heavy land that's not necessarily been cultivated or much growth in there, sometimes what we can find is that is really, really hard for a tine drill, because it doesn't rely upon the weight of the drill, it relies upon the tine and the horsepower to actually pull it through. So what we sometimes can find is that we have to lift the disc higher and just go in with the legs. But that's the versatility of the machine. If the going's really, really hard, we can still establish a crop.
Yeah, so if we get situations like we've had over the past few years where you can get a lot of rainfall coming up to harvest and then it bakes out, soil can go very tight, then it will still be able to cope with that.
Absolutely. We've never had a problem with this, and we've done so much with it, and there's so much versatility behind the drill. But the beauty of this drill as well is we offer different options. So we'll offer it as mounted like this, or we'll offer it as trailed. But the beauty is that if you have a trail drill, you can still use it mounted.
Right.
So from a profiling point of view, we find the trail drill profiles nicer on the ground than a mounted, because it's not dictated where it drills by the tractor.
Yeah. So you've got the capability to contour follow better.
Absolutely. So what we've also got with this particular drill is because we're using the seed roller to distribute the seed, what we find is with having an infinite gearbox, forward speed doesn't determine the amount of actual seed that then goes in the ground.
Right. So you basically ground wheel drive, you're sensing distance, and then seed placement goes along with that.
Correct. And very, very easy to calibrate, really accurate seed distribution. But I think the beauty of it that always surprises me is how you can handle a very, very small seed and a very large seed through the same box. And that's the beauty of the sponge roller system.
Yeah. And from a maintenance point of view, pretty straightforward as well.
It's, to be totally honest with you, Jonathan, I carried 2,500 parts on the shelf, and really I've supplied very, very little in parts for the drills I've supplied. We've just now started to get into that replacement program, but what we're actually finding at the moment is that we're not supplying lots of points. We're supplying points as to where the tractor's actually been, because that's actually now under more compaction, so the drill is having to work harder to get through those wheelings. So when a customer comes to us and we says, I need kind of 4 or 6 points, usually we always find it's the actual points behind the wheels.
Behind the tractor wheels, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And again, because it's time-based, you're going to still be able to produce a good seed bed in those lines there as well?
Absolutely. I mean, the drill, as I said, being a very versatile drill, we're capable of actually now going into tilth, ground that's actually had roundup on, an existing lay, and we're able to actually establish a really, really good crop in any of those environments.
So you could go from a more traditional cultivated, if necessary for residues and slugs and whatever else. You could the farmer could do a surface cultivation. This would still easily cope with that. Soil will drive through, or you could go direct in and reseed or put it into a cover crop, provided that was managed.
Absolutely. So handling cover crop, not an issue for the drill. Handling things like wheat and barley, again, not a problem. I mean, obviously, you'll know the work we did with AgriVista at Lamport. We established a really, really nice bed and a really, really good, healthy crop of wheat.
At relatively low disturbance.
At very, very minimum disturbance as well.
Which is good from a grassweed point of view.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, from the point of view of, it's relatively narrow, so it's quite simple. Contour following isn't too much of an issue then.
Nope.
Because it's relatively light, I'm assuming that you can run at relatively low ground pressure on those tyres?
We would expect, because of the weight of the drill, we should be actually in single figure pressures. So with a very, very light tractor, I mean, maximum horsepower tractor to pull our 3-metre drill is probably 100 horsepower. Now, a lot of people would say, do I invest in a set of VF tyres for an 100 horsepower tractor? again, it's going to give you that better environment when you're actually treading on the ground. So if you can tread with far less pressure, it's much better.
Yeah. If we're squeezing the soil differently across the width, then there's always going to be a discrepancy. So if you can minimise pressure, I think for me that is a very important point. If you can get down to single figure PSI with this style of machine, with a tine-based system, then we're not going to have an awful lot of issues, are we, going into that?
Absolutely, and the drill being lightweight, I mean, our heaviest drill is a seed and fertiliser drill, complete with trailing kits, about 1.7 tonnes, so capable of most small tractors, and if we look at the smallest drill we do, you're about 750 kilos.
So do you find that the fact that a lot of your customers are reducing intensity of soil movement, then they're not getting the ruts at harvest, for example, so they're not having to correct that to such an extent as well?
Yeah, and we know that compaction's costly to remove, and what we're actually finding is more and more farmers are steering to zero tillage in an effort to actually reduce the amount of traffic on the field, reduce the amount of cycles. I mean, if we go back to the old farming, you plough, you power harrow, you then drill, you then roll. So then you've got 4 cost inputs. And from a drill like this, we've probably got one of the lowest cost inputs of any drill combination.
And do you have some of your customers that would actually, if necessary, intervene and occasionally do a correcting action on the soil if necessary?
It's very, very rare that. And what we sometimes find, and my colleague Ian, we always have this argument about rolling. I'm dead against it. You know, I'd rather just leave it as it is. Ian, being an arable man, really wants to now go to the efforts of rolling. But for me, whenever I actually do anything in field, Jonathan, I generally just leave it and I'll let the natural closure of the slot happen automatically.
And you find with that little zone underneath that it doesn't open the slot up like you could get on some systems?
Yeah, I mean, what we generally find, I mean, we also offer a disc drill in this combination, but what we generally find in heavier land, using a disc type system, it could be very, very moist when you drill, but the moment then the sun comes out, what generally then personal experience finds is that slot then opens up. And that's why I prefer to use the tine drill over a disc drill, but there is definitely a place for both tine and disc drills on farm. Just depends on conditions.
I think that's right. I think the more I see as well, possibly it's not the message that the farmer would ideally like to hear, but you sometimes need both systems.
Totally agree. And the plan is for the future with this particular drill is we're going to be able to offer a bolt-on, bolt-off module where you can either run from tine or you can run from disc. So there is going to be a module available within the next 12-18 months which will allow you to actually change the versatility of the drill from tine to disc or vice versa.
So potentially you could establish an autumn cover with a tine, a little bit more structuring, a little bit more attention to that surface if it's slumped, and then once that cover has gone through from a spring crop drilling, you could put the discs in and minimally nail that in with a disc-based system.
Absolutely, but that then lends itself well to the versatility of the Aitchison drill, having that interchangeability and allowing you to do that. And currently we're on the Seedmatic with a 5-inch spacing, and on the grass farmer we're on the 6-inch spacing. So slightly different, but we do find the 5-inch spacing works really well.
Okay, now that makes a lot of sense. Good. Well, thank you very much for walking us through the drill and giving us the benefit of your experience. I guess you've sold a number of these in this country over the years?
Yeah, we've sold quite a lot. I mean, the first year was kind of our fledgling year. Getting into year 2, year 3, we're finding now the sales are now ramping up. We're currently now oversold on what we've currently got. Our next import of drills is probably going to be November, December, ready for next season. So everything we've currently got is already pre-sold.
Okay, just to give people a little bit of bad news then.
Yeah, exactly. But I'll still take the order. But the delivery date's going to be kind of sort of next year.
Okay. Now, very many thanks.
You're welcome, Philip.
And yeah, hope you have a good show.
Thank you. Appreciate it.